I was already standing when she said it. "You're outdated. We're done here," the CEO hissed across the glass table. I nodded, calm, polite, understood. That was the moment the retirement trust activated its voting rights. By Monday morning, the board convened an emergency meeting. Someone whispered the question before the doors even closed. Who just fired the person who owns 76% of the shares? I didn't smile. I never do at the moment of impact. I saved that for later. The divorce papers arrived the same week, courier envelope, neutral font. Her signature decisive, mine anticipated. She didn't bother with an explanation. She never did when she thought she was winning. We weren't always this way. We were careful once, intentional. We built routines like small sanctuaries, Sunday pancakes, late-night spreadsheets spread across the dining table, our daughter asleep upstairs with the hall light on. I thought we were aligned. I thought alignment was love. She learned leverage before she learned loyalty. The first fracture was subtle, a missed dinner blamed on a board dinner. A phone turned face down when I entered rooms, a counselor recommended by a friend she wouldn't name. I felt the air change before I understood why breathing hurt. I didn't confront. I never confront early. Early confrontation teaches your enemy how much you know. I watched. The counselor's office smelled like paper and citrus cleaner. I sat in the chair that faces the window because I prefer exits. My wife chose the couch. The counselor folded her hands and asked our daughter if she felt safe sharing. My daughter looked at me, not for permission, for reassurance. "May I share something my dad doesn't know about yet?" she asked. The counselor nodded. The recordings weren't dramatic. That's why they were devastating. Car rides, kitchen counters, the low, confident voice of my wife rehearsing truths she wanted our child to believe. Not lies exactly, worse. Selective facts sharpened into weapons. "He doesn't understand us. He's always choosing work. If you tell the counselor, they'll help mommy keep things calm." The room went silent the way a market does right before a crash. The counselor's pen stopped moving. My wife didn't look at me. She knew the sound of her own voice. I cataloged the damage. I cataloged the dates. Pain is information. I filed it accordingly. Planning didn't begin then. It accelerated. I hired no one who knew me. I spoke to attorneys who specialized in quiet outcomes. I audited the trust documents I'd written years earlier, when I was still called visionary instead of obsolete. I reread the bylaws my wife skimmed when she thought my patience meant weakness. The retirement trust was designed for stability. It held my shares. It had conditions. Conditions trigger rights. I placed surveillance where it belonged, on finances, communications, calendars. I never watched people. People notice. Systems don't. I let her file first. I let her feel the wind at her back. Execution is not anger, it's timing. Friday afternoon she pushed the board vote. I'd be transitioned. That word makes cowards feel clean. "You're outdated," she said, rehearsed and satisfied. "We're done here." "Understood," I replied, because understanding is not agreement. At 4:59 p.m., the trust activated. At 5:01, council sent notices. At 5:07, the CEO role changed hands. Not dramatically, administratively, the most humiliating way power can move. Monday morning, the boardroom filled with men who'd practiced certainty. They asked questions they should have asked years ago. They looked at me like a map they'd ignored. I didn't attend. Ownership doesn't require presence. The fallout arrived in layers. The divorce shifted first. The recordings became exhibits. The counselor's notes turned precise. The narrative collapsed. Custody recalibrated toward reality. Then the social consequences. Invitations rescinded. Apologies misfired. She learned that influence evaporates when credibility does. Finally, the personal reckoning. She stood in the kitchen one night, the same counter where she'd coached our child, and asked how long I'd known. "Long enough," I said. She waited for cruelty. I gave her truth. I didn't want to win. I wanted it to be accurate. Accuracy is merciless. I think about betrayal the way I think about architecture now. Weak points aren't always where the damage shows. They're where the load was misjudged. I loved my wife once. I loved the version of her that didn't need shortcuts. That version retired quietly, years before I did. As for my daughter, she sleeps with the hall light on again, not because she's afraid, because she knows where the switch is. The board stabilized, the company recovered, the trust returned to dormancy, satisfied. Power, when exercised correctly, goes back to sleep. I don't regret the silence. I don't regret the patience. I don't regret the moment I said "understood" and meant something else entirely.